the special formal session, and now point where may I have a motion to certify the closed session.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, can we do the vote?
Sorry. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have certified the closed session to be in accordance with a motion to recess.
Okay, at this point, could I have a motion to certify the informal and formal session of June 2nd, 2020?
So moved.
The minutes? Okay. I'm sorry?
They already certified the June 2nd.
Oh, I'm sorry, we've already certified the June, we've already
Oh, we
adopted
did
the
these
June
already?
2nd. I apologize.
Okay, not a problem at all.
But we have to do the minutes.
Okay,
That's what he said.
That's what he did.
Okay, it's fine.
okay, these were already done?
No, they're not, just adopt. He
Okay.
said certify the minutes, is what he said.
Okay.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, was that, all,
The motion was for June 2nd, but you can do them all at one.
do them all at once? Okay.
I think in the next motion you can make for the remainder. of the
Okay,
minutes.
a motion for the remainder of the minutes,
So moved. Second.
okay?
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you approve the minutes of June 3rd, June 4th, June 9th, and June 13th as submitted.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to have the public hearing on appropriation of CARES Act funding.
We have one speaker, Barbara Messner.
Welcome.
Welcome. Your officer said since I'm 10 feet away from everybody that I don't have to keep my mask on. Is that okay?
That is okay.
Good. All right. On the public hearing on ordinances, is that the one? Or did you switch them around?
Public hearing, appropriation of CARES Act funding.
CARES Act, right, okay. And also, on the minutes, why wouldn't the minutes be certified at the same time as the summary? Because it's been June 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 9th, and 13th, and they were all formal sessions, so I was hoping to get those minutes. Okay, on the appropriation of the CARES Act, we keep getting money from the state and the federal government, and the city's exploiting all of these tragedies, the victim families, and now this COVID pandemic, which is mostly, it's kind of questionable who's transmitting it and who really has it and how sick they are. So, anyway, a lot of this money is going to private corporations like Centera Velocity, and it's not going directly to the people who've, are victims. So, I would like a little bit more transparency. I think 2016, Ms. Abbott ran on transparency. So, being able to see everyone's Facebook page and get emails would be great, and get replies from my correspondents would be great. And, as I said last time, a lot of these special sessions, I don't consider this, these legal documents. There's no official name. It says city manager, it doesn't say acting city manager or the person's name, city attorney, and all this scribble, even initials, but there's no typed name. So I'm challenging all of these meetings. So this is just one item that the light's blinking on, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, I want to remind everyone that the city council speaker policy that allows certain representative of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items. All other speakers, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers are reminded that comments during the formal portion of the meeting must be limited to the subject of the item that is being considered by the council at the time you are called. When speakers are called on each item, the clerk will call for those individuals who have signed up to speak. After those who have signed up to speak have spoken, the chair will ask if there are any other persons who wish to speak on the item at hand. Those speakers will be allowed to speak and will be asked to give their name, address, and telephone number for the clerk to record. We have several items where only one speaker has signed up. As such, the city clerk will call the speaker, identify each item, and have that they have registered on. The speaker will receive 3 minutes to comment on each item. Again, the speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter of the items they have signed up to address. Finally, I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chamber to be civil in their discussion and decorum. Whatever views you hold and wish to express, the city council wants to hear from you and ensure that all viewpoints and all persons are respected. The best way to do this is to strive for civility and respect. Okay, Mr. Vice Mayor, do we have any consent item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. And council, every planning item is now going to be heard because we have speakers on every one. But, Mr. Mayor, I move for approval under the consent agenda under ordinances, resolutions, ordinance to accept and appropriate $258,160 from the Department of Justice Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program, Ray Correctional Center video wall, purchase of drug screen kits, tests, and temporary contractual positions. Item 2, resolution to reinstate all portions of the City Council speaker policy, noting an amendment that would begin July 7th. So move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, if you approve the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood.
Okay, I open a public hearing on planning items. Okay, item F1, Craig Lewandowski for conditional use permit, raise short-term rental at 446 Gulls Quay, Unit A, District 4, Bayside.
The applicant, Craig Lewandowski, is participating virtually. Mr. Lewandowski, if you'd like to begin your comments.
Hi, yeah, this is Craig Lewandowski. Yeah, I'm just the applicant and the owner for this property at 4446 Gulls Quay. I'm not sure of anything I need to speak to. I was just trying to apply for a conditional use permit, so I could potentially in the future use this, utilize this property like as an Airbnb.
Okay.
Okay, any other speakers?
Yes, sir. The next speaker is Barbara Messner.
I need to ask a question. It's really confusing because I signed up on ordinances last week and I wasn't allowed to speak. And there are 2 items on ordinances. Are you bringing those back? Because I only spoke on one.
Okay,
I only spoke on item
You spoke on
1.
the public-
you spoke on a public hearing. Okay, we're into planning items now.
I'm aware. I'm asking because I only spoke on one of the ordinances. I signed up to speak on both. So are you bringing it back or did you just
Okay,
not let me
Mr.
speak
Moss.
on both?
I don't mean to We have not yet rescinded the policy that is in place that only allows for people to speak on required public hearings and on plating items. So the ordinances are not within the speaking policy role of citizens until July the 7th.
I thought that's what was on here for us to speak on, the ordinances. And that's why I came today, because you're voting to reinstate it, and I want to oppose that. And,
Mrs.
I only spoke on one
Yeah,
item.
Ms. Messner, we're on planning
I
items
know,
now.
I'm trying, because you keep hopping around. Okay, this is Craig Lewandowski. Okay, this is nothing personal. This is Lewis Jones District. And Mr. Tower, you haven't spoken about no events at these places, and Mr. Bellucci hasn't brought that up either. But I would like for somebody to ask questions about whether the people live there, whether there's going to be somebody on site. And I think we have way, way too many short-term rentals. It's like endless, and you're ruining the quality of the neighborhoods, and we don't know who is there. A lot of people, when you had these before, were coming up speaking problems in their neighborhood and, even being threatened by people who were just renting homes near them. So I think there's too many, and with everything going on, all the rioting and the crime, I think it's really important until the crime is resolved that we put a hold on all these items. And it's election day. I don't want to have to come on election day. But yeah, I'm in opposition of any of these moving forward because you've had since 2015 to take care of the problems in neighborhoods. Protect Virginia Beach residential neighborhoods. And this is just a picture of, some neighborhoods. Let's see. This is the voters, like Shantytown, and this is the politicians, their homes, pools. I don't think there's too many, except for high-end short-term rentals in certain neighborhoods.
Okay, Thank you. Anybody else?
That's all the speakers. Would you like the applicant
Yeah,
to rebut it all? Mr. Lewandowski, if you would like to make additional comments, you may go ahead and do so.
Yes, as long as I'm not muted right now, I don't think I am. Real quick, yeah, this is a duplex unit building that I live in and occupy one side with my family. So in this particular situation, we currently have that other unit that we'd like to get the permit for, rented out to a longer term renter, month-to-month renter. But we were kind of hoping to get the opportunity to, in the future, be able to do it as a short-term rental. But I understand the concerns that were just addressed, that were just brought up, and those would be concerns of ours as well. I mean, if our short-term renters, or we found that or utilizing this unit as an Airbnb was bringing down the neighborhood or bringing down our own building that we live and occupy, we wouldn't move forward with it, or we would do everything we can to make sure we had quality renters in there. So I understand the concern. It's a concern of mine as well. We certainly wouldn't want to be living next door, sharing a wall with any kind of renters that are creating any kind of chaos for the neighborhood or neighbors. So I totally understand, but that's the situation here. Is we live in the building as well.
Other speakers?
That's all the speakers, sir.
Mr. Jones, do we have a motion?
Well, I'd like to make some comments
Sure.
first, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I'm very familiar with this area and the so-called street that this particular piece of property is located on. Actually, it is not a city street. It's an alleyway, is what it is. And it's not, it is not a city street. It's very narrow. And I have repeatedly had complaints from people who live on this alleyway about the problem with the trash removal trucks and the garbage trucks they have to back down the roadway to get to the houses to pick up the garbage off of this alley. And there's the speakers who spoke against this application at the Planning Commission apparently are not here tonight. They didn't get their way at the Planning Commission. So, but the bottom line is I've had 2 or 3 of Mr. Legowski's neighbors, quite frankly, calling me, saying that they don't support this happening there. It's very narrow. In order to park back out of his driveway, he has driveway and he has space for the cars, but to get out of his driveway and get in an angle on the alley where he can get out, he has to back into somebody else's driveway. Somebody has to back in somebody else's driveway. It's just not a compatible thing for short-term rental. I heard what he said, and I appreciate the fact that he's very upfront and so forth about his what he wants to do, but I just don't think that this is a reasonable application and the impact that it has on the other neighbors that live around him. And because of the fact that it's not a city street, it has a name, but it's not a city street, and it's very narrow, and access to the area is very difficult at times, I'm going to move against the application.
Okay, we have a motion for denial. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Comments from the council? Anybody? Okay,
Vote open. Okay.
vote's open.
Councilmember Abbott,
Nay.
and this is a motion to deny. Councilmember Berlucci,
Aye.
Councilmember Henley,
Aye.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember Moss,
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse,
Nay.
Councilmember Tower,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood,
Aye.
Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
By a vote of 9 to 2, this application has been denied.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item F2 under planning. Nikita Stepanoff, Ray, conditional use permit of short-term rental at 932 Delaware Avenue, District 6 Beach.
Sablenta,
Svetlana.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Svetlana. I'm the wife and manager of the property. So we are aware of the issue with the parking. Basically, we started Airbnb business before all this, before the city ordinance came out, so we were not aware when we started that we had a problem. But once we filed everything, actually at the hearing, we realized it. So what we did a business decision, and we immediately turned it into a 2-bedroom. I even have pictures, if you like to know. One of the bedrooms now is the playroom, and 2 other bedrooms are actually bedrooms with beds. That also helped us to actually get the family in instead of, all the other guests. That actually helped our neighborhood to stay in a family-friendly environment, because we did have a few complaints that people had parties, so now we actually eliminated that issue, and the neighbors are actually now happy with us. And we also have a limit to 2 cars, so we never had a issue or complaint from a neighbor about the parking. So we were hoping you can give that some consideration, or maybe help us legally, guide us through a legal way to change this property to a two-bedroom. We are, ready to do that as well. So whatever we can do to stay in business and make everything legal, we definitely ready to do so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr.
I have
Wood?
a question of the staff. I was looking at the comments in the the verbatim, and what is the size of the parking? Because it looks like it's not even big enough for two spaces.
No, it's
Mr. Tejon?
enough for two spaces, right? That's true.
Mr. Wood, the parking that is available on site does just meet the size criteria. It's 18.17 feet across and more than 20 feet deep. So it does meet the dimensional criteria for the parking spaces for two.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Tower.
Hold on, there's more speakers.
One question for Mr. Tahan, and then one question for the applicant, if I could. Mr. Tahan,
Okay.
would you remind us how you would enforce, if we were to approve this for a two-bedroom, how you would enforce that it was only advertised and used as a two-bedroom?
It would be two-pronged approach. It would be with the new service that we're obtaining to make sure the listings are showing appropriately as a two-bedroom in the listings, and then also an inspection. We have not seen any of the changes to verify that it's been converted from a three to a two-bedroom in the manner that's been proposed today.
Okay. Mr. Wood?
So the staff recommendation for denial is based on 3 bedrooms?
Yes, sir.
So what is the staff recommendation based on 2 bedrooms?
If they have two bedrooms only, they have two parking spaces, they would meet the criteria, so staff would recommend approval.
How many bedrooms are in there right now?
Right. As far as I'm aware, it sounds like the applicant in between the planning commission and now has converted one of the bedrooms to a playroom. So we would need to take a look at it to see if it would meet that criteria. But we would also need it to get altered appropriately through either by permit or through the real estate records to show that they don't have another bedroom, because we do use that to verify.
Would be appropriate procedurally to defer this until you've had a chance to re-look or to approve it subject to that?
Council's discretion, but we have not had a chance to put our eyes on it, so.
Okay.
I would think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we have more speakers?
Yes, we have one additional speaker, Barbara Messner.
Okay, I think it's outrageous, nothing personal against these people who want to make money, but I'm not in favor of, investments in neighborhoods, and those places are really close together. It's obvious the neighbors, are too close, and it would be a total stranger. What if somebody next door has a baby or small kids? Are they going to let them play outside, not knowing who these people are? You don't know who you rent to. You can't guarantee that. And as Ms. Henley has eloquently stated many times, on all these issues with short-term rentals and the problems at Sandbridge, it started with Sandbridge, the police were not enforcing the codes. The people had problems. People were parking in the street, huge vans, huge tour buses, parties all night. Air Police, and I want to thank y'all for being here, and I wish all of us could have spent the day voting. But, they're overworked, and they're also having to take care of a lot of things. As far as public safety, I think that should be our number one problem, not flooding. Public safety is an issue. And, as far as funding, the police are at the oceanfront. The police were at Mount Trashmore. And I don't think our council members should be marching with anybody. You didn't march with other people, and everyone's life matters. You have to take care of everyone, and public safety matters. So if he hasn't seen it, how come it's even being considered? I mean, this is ridiculous. Like I said, you know, we have issues with statues and crime. I've been at the beach. I see what's going on down there. It's not safe. It's not safe, and I know we don't have enough police officers, and I'll bring that up at the next meetings. You know, I have that information. Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Tower?
Just a question, Ms. Stefanoff, am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
Do I understand that what you would like to do is amend your application essentially?
Yes.
To have a two-bedroom?
Yes.
All right, well then, I'll defer to the city attorney. Is it whatever is the most efficient way to take care of this procedurally? Either defer it to a date certain next time, or to approve it subject to inspection by the planning commission? I'm open to suggestion.
Okay, what do you suggest?
Well, I think you can do it either way. You can make a condition, you can make a condition that says that it is approved upon passing an inspection by the planning department satisfactorily.
So moved.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Henley?
I'm just going to say it one time, but I'm still voting against all short-term rentals until I'm convinced that we have a means of enforcing these regulations. Calls I got today over the weekend. Our police department is not the zoning inspection department, and we should not be relying on them to have to enforce things that are going on. We have no way of enforcing these requirements and these regulations. We don't have the staff. We don't have the process. And at this time, I simply cannot, in good conscience, approve short-term rentals.
Okay, Mr. Moss?
Well, I like to ditto Mrs. Henley's remarks, but also I have gone through Freedom of Information Act myself, or got information which seems how often what I see planning staff approve that we vote on, and later they say, oh, no, that goes away, sidewalks, other things. I don't have the implicit trust factor. I'm in the show me state. I would want to see what they thought was satisfactory, what really met those conditions. I understand that people are much more comfortable, but the track record is less than stellar. So I'd vote no on that basis alone, but also I think Mrs. Henley's comments about we pass conditions that we know we can't enforce, and we give the public a false sense of what's going to happen. And I just think that's a representation we can't commit and meet. That's not what I want to be associated with.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay,
I may,
Mr. Jones.
if there was a deferral, I would be willing to vote for it, to give the lady the chance to make the changes and do what she needs to do, but I can't vote for it outright without that
Do you want to make a substitute motion?
being done, so
You want to make a substitute?
Because I'll second it if you do.
I'll make a substitute motion to defer it, yes.
For 30 days? 30 days?
30 days?
30 days?
What's the time frame do you think it'll take to get it done?
Well, whatever you can give us, because right now it's really busy. So if we can get 60 days, it'll be
60
easier.
day?
So back to the planning commission to be amended.
But do we need to meet, or, yeah, I'm not sure of the process that's, yeah, required legally for us
Okay,
to.
Kay, does this have to go back to the planning commission?
No, sir.
Okay.
Indefinite?
Indefinite deferral?
Yeah, indefinite deferral, and she,
Okay, we have a motion and a second on an, indefinite deferral. Any comment on that? Okay, if we can do the,
Vote, okay. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
It's going to be deferred.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have deferred this application indefinitely.
Okay.
Substitute motion, don't we need another motion?
Do we need another motion on the original?
I'll
one?
withdraw the original.
I don't
motion.
believe
Okay.
so, because it was just a deferral doesn't require,
Depends
yes.
upon the city attorney.
Thank you.
Yes. We just have to vote on the substitute motion, and the other one now goes away.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. All right. Item F3, Beach Borough Development LLC conditional use permits raise short-term rentals. 410 25th Street and B 408 25th Street, units A and B, Beach District.
Applicant is Representative Eddie Burdon.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wood, honorable members of City Council, Mr. City Manager. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney, representing the applicant on these three cases, which are the Bouchard family. I am passing around copies for everybody, but I apologize, I did not make copies of the elevations of the dwellings that are being constructed, and they're not in the package. I did provide those at the Planning Commission public hearing, so maybe they made it into your package. The one elevation that is kind of a beige color with nice front porch, that's the dwelling that's being built at 410 25th Street, which is item A under this item, as well as on Unit A at 408 25th Street. And the blue one is the second unit, or Unit B, at 408 25th Street. In your package, you will see pictures of what was on these properties. They are about 2.5 blocks from the beach at the oceanfront in Old Beach. Very poor quality, dilapidated old structures. These applications, the only reason that the staff indicated their opposition to Planning Commission was they didn't want to count the new garages to be constructed as a part of the dwelling, as meeting the parking requirements, which I and the Planning Commission members didn't quite understand that logic, that they're all on-site parking, they meet all the requirements of the ordinance. Now, the Bouchards, just like Mr. Edel and Mr. Taylor, have spent and are spending considerable amount of capital doing much-needed, long-overdue redevelopment in the Old Beach section of the city. That's why you have petitions, letters and petitions of support, 15 people on the letters and the petitions of support. They are making beautiful additions to this community. These short-term rentals will be professionally managed, all of them, 24/7 access to professional real estate management. Advertisements for all the units will be very clear on the number of parking spaces. They can't have more than the number of parking spaces. Most won't even have that many. And no events. All of these conditions that are attached to these approvals are far more restrictive than are people who can rent for 2 weeks or for 30 days or for 6 months. And we want repeat business. The last thing, one of these new houses to be, trashed and not well taken care of. All of the neighbors will be provided with contact information for the management. If there's ever a problem, they have somebody to call immediately, and they should also email the city if there's a problem. We're not afraid of complying with these regulations. We have every intention and desire and need to comply. And again, this is the right location for these, and they will be maintained in a first-class manner. with, as I said, 24/7 access to the professional management, and the advertisements will be able to be shared with the city, but they will be very clear in parking and very clear in no events. Be happy to answer any questions. Was recommended, all three of these were recommended, I believe, unanimously by the Planning Commission for approval.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Okay. Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bourdon. I think I understand the logic of Mr. Tahan's and his staff's objection, which doesn't mean I agree with it, but at least I wanted to say I kind of get where he's coming from.
And there is on-street parking on 25th Street, but
Here's what the only question I have really about it is, and I'm really addressing this to Mr. Tahan, is there any way that this building has been approved for construction that somehow it would not be approved but for the short-term rental regulations? Which is not to denigrate anything Mr. Bourdon has just said. I just want to make sure I understand the colloquy that happened at the planning commission. Do you understand my question?
Can you restate it?
Here's
I'm sorry.
what I'm asking. I just want to make sure that we haven't somehow, by passing these short-term rental ordinances, created something where somebody can build a building that they wouldn't otherwise configure in a way that they wouldn't otherwise be able to build, assuming there were no short-term regulations.
No, so this property, I'll kind of clarify that a little bit. The property did receive a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals to setbacks and other requirements in order to build the proposed building that is shown in the site plan layout here. So they do have the right to build the single-family residence as it's shown, as it was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So if this were not to become a short-term residence, it would be perfectly legally occupied as a single-family residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure of. I don't want to cut anybody off, but
I would just simply add that all that would be required for a single family would be 2 parking spaces. But this was not done with 3 for any reason other than there's no on-street parking on that alley, which is a through alley, and it goes through to both streets. But that's the reason why there's 3 spaces there. This is exactly what would have been built, and actually, when we started this, there wasn't the idea of making it a short-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yes, the next speaker is Barbara Messner.
Yeah, Eddie Verdon Sykes, R.J. Nutter, there's major conflicts with a lot of people involved in these. And, this is just investments. I've said this before, I lived on 24th Street for 10 and a half years, the 500 block. There's major flooding there, and there's no way. There should be a limit to how many rental properties should be in a residential neighborhood. And since the city appoints the planning and zoning, and economic development, the residents are outnumbered. And the money we gave Pharrell for something in the water, which, I'm opposed to all these events, 250,000, 350,000 using our school buses. He goes on TV with that money and he tells everybody, invest in short-term rental. So we're destroying the quality of life and you're endangering people in neighborhoods. And, who's going to... it says staff denial. Why does something come before you if the staff denies it? And people should be required to show up, not their attorneys. The person should be able to show up. why should we have to go up against attorneys? I'll be careful what I say. Mr. Dyer, you told me to be nice. But, yeah, it's not fair. I would like to have gotten out of here in time to do other things, but I think it's very important that we protect the people who live there, and we have more affordable housing. You can't, and the workforce housing that Ms. Wilson talks about, for city employees, that's discrimination. You can't have workforce housing for city employees and not for everyone else. It's the same with the Dream Academy. You have to take care of everyone in the city, not just certain people. And I think it's really important that Mr. Tower, reads the changes about events, because who's gonna go in there? Like, that person, that wanted 60 days, she didn't bring any pictures. Mr. Tahan didn't bring any pictures, and he wants to outsource, new staff. Mr. Leahy, when you spoke about having a hard time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Is
it.
my 3 minutes up? Okay, I'll finish it at the next time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the application.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Is there going to be discussion?
Discussion, yes, my apologies.
I just wanted to comment on the economic aspect of this, because clearly someone could build a single-family house. There's a lot of things about tax policy. It all comes down to cash flow, which generates you the best cash flow, which gets you the leverage when you can do 100% expensing, capital cash flow, tax laws, does a lot of things that you wouldn't fundamentally think because of short-term rentals as an option. It changes what's the most productive value, cash flow of the property becomes not single-family homes, but short-term rentals. You had to go back to LA and look at California. Of course, the real estate's much higher priced. When this whole COVID thing came through, you saw a lot of the short-term rentals coming back on the market for sale because the cash flow wasn't there because they weren't allowed to rent at all in California. People couldn't make the mortgage payments, and they had to liquidate the assets and put it back on the market. I don't blame anyone maximizing their cash flow, but people just understand that our policy and the federal tax laws do create a tremendous cash flow value at certain locations, which favors a single-family home that you would build would be more profitable as a short-term rental than sold as a single-family home. And yes, our policies do have a factor, but also fiscal policies of the feds make and create cash value that the underlying property without the tax laws wouldn't do. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, but believe me, in the end, it's all about cash is king, and it's all about which generates the most cash flow over both the short term and the long run, and we're seeing that influence in the marketplace.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we have the vote.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Nay.
Councilmember Moss?
Nay.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 8 to 3, you have approved the conditional use permit for Beachboro Development LLC.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item F4, Anthony S. Craig and Monica Malone Craig and / Dave, Dan Pescari and Christina Maxim for a conditional use permit, short-term rental at 417 22nd and a half Street, District 6, Beach.
The applicant, Anthony Craig.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor. My name is Anthony Craig. I'm here for a short-term rental permit for 417 22 and a half Street. I was born and raised in Virginia, joined the Navy. Navy brought me here in the late 90s, fell in love with the place, retired here, went to a small medical school down in Norfolk, and came back to live here at the beach. My wife and I purchased the house at 417 22 and a half Street as a new construction. That's when the city started cutting the lots in half, and our side faces the half street, and then the other side faces the 23rd. We bought this house to fill it full of kids. That didn't happen, so we found ourselves with the doors, a lot of doors shut, and we're just using a couple of bedrooms. So we placed it on the market, and we bought a 3-bedroom house about 8 minutes up the street. It stayed on the market for a while. Apparently, I bought it at the bubble in 2006, and the price point was way too high. So I put a short-term renter in there, a judge. He stayed in there a couple of months, and then he moved to Bay Colony because the half-street life he couldn't get used to. My wife's got her MBA, so we heard about these short-term rentals, and we decided to set it up as one. We cater to families for the most part. We capture the folks that want to come to the beach, spend some time with the groups of families in the summertime. In the fall and winter, we get the wrestlers, the dance crews, the cheerleader families. We have a maximum of 8 people in this home because it is our home and we love our neighbors that are all beside us. We've been there for 13 years, and we do not allow parties whatsoever. It's in the listing several times. No parties are allowed. We vet all the requests, so I don't have an instant book on my app. You have to ask me, please, can I book your house, and tell me why you want to book it and how many people. We list it as a 4-bedroom. I have a small nursery that they count as a 5-bedroom. It's almost like a closet, but it has a closet in it. That's why it's a 5-bedroom. And so we keep all of our linens and supplies and that behind the lock. So we had 27 renters last year. We got our business license. We paid all our city and state taxes. Our home is well maintained. It's the jewel on the half street. We're a 5-star super host rating, and we live 6 to 8 minutes away from the property. All my neighbors, most of my neighbors are renters, long-term renters. They have my cell phone number, and if any problems, they call, but they haven't yet, so there hasn't been any issues. My house has been sitting vacant since January because I thought I would get this short-term rental thing through doing the right thing, and then the COVID hit, and just kicked the can down the road a couple more blocks. And then I put it up for sale. I was like, I'm bleeding here. I got another house on 508 25th Street. I got a foreclosure that I bought about 10 years ago. And so, 3 mortgages. So when I went up, we're on a planning committee, they informed me that I didn't have enough parking spots for my 5-bedroom house, even though they took the ones that I've been parking at out of the picture for like 13 years. Apparently it's in the easement about 3 feet. I can safely park 5 cars in this house, not even an inch on the road. I'm here today to ask for that conditional use permit, request permission to perhaps use the apron for an additional car. The rocks out front there was off limits by 3 feet because it's for a right-of-way. But if you can't do anything right away, there's a huge telephone pole there that no one can go around. UPS trucks can get through, fire trucks, all that. And as I mentioned before, I had a car sitting there for 13 years, our 3rd vehicle, and no problems. I have made additional arrangements for parking at the 25th Street garage for an annual fee, either monthly or annually, depends on how this turns out. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Next speaker.
Barbara Messner.
I'm glad I'm here, but I'm extremely disappointed, especially in Mr. Dyer, that you're not speaking up for the neighborhoods. And 3 votes really don't seem to make a difference. They get approved anyway. I mean, like I said, one reason I started the Friends of 31st Street Park was because the city's been systematically taking away parking. There's a parking restrictions Virginia Beach website, and you can look at all the problems, ticket and tows, and a lot of these high-density projects Can you quit twiddling that, Mr. Wood, when I'm trying to speak, please? Yeah, all these high density, the people are allowed to park in, on the off-street parking. There's nothing left for the people who live here. There's, I think, 1.8 million people that pay taxes here. And the parking is taken for people that work in hotels. It's taken for, I mean, it's ridiculous. There isn't enough parking, and you're letting people in the garage. You already reduced the number of parking spaces in the garage, and you're building new garages. But you're not taking care of the neighborhoods, and I'm really surprised. It's really nice, it sounds nice, when Mr. Moss and Ms. Henley and Mr. Jones, I think Ms. Henley is sincere. But, nobody else seems to care. Ms. Wooten came out and Ms. Henley came out when I was trying to fight a brewery, at a very busy intersection. But, like I said, okay, stop pandering. All lives, all residents matter. Not stockholders, not lawyers, not town bank who's financing all these things. I'd like to know how many there are for Bouchard. They're all over the place. They tear down these little houses that are affordable housing and they put up high-density project, and there is no parking and there isn't enough enforcement. So, I can't believe, Mr. Bellucci, you're talking about, I see you looking at your watch. You care more about the Chrysler reopening, that's where you work, than what's going on in the city. And you did I think our mayor should be speaking about all the problems with public safety. I see a lot of things that go on, and I think that's more important than all this investment property.
That's
Okay.
all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Tower.
I'm going to move to defer this indefinitely because I think I don't want to cut off the possibility of the applicant renting the lesser number of bedrooms, just as we just went through.
Yes, sir.
So unless he objects,
No, sir. I rent 4 bedrooms and I have a maximum occupancy of 8 people. I will never have 3 people per bedroom in my house.
well, you understand what I'm looking for is you may come back for 3 bedrooms. I would not support a 4-bedroom because that requires violating parking rules that I've tried to be as consistent as possible with.
Yes, sir. With 4 bed, I can fit 3 cars now with the addition of the paid parking spot at 25th Street.
Which would mean you would have to apply as a 3-bedroom rental, and you'd have to advertise it and use it as a 3-bedroom rental.
Okay, so we have a motion for deferral.
And I'm going to, otherwise, the option is I'm going to move to deny it. So I'm going to move to defer it in case you want to consider that and
Yes, sir.
talk with planning folks about it.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Okay.
Is there a date certain?
Indefinite.
Indefinite
Thank you.
deferral. We have a motion and a second for indefinite deferral.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Mr. Tower's doing here. I'm very familiar with 22nd and a half Street. It's an extraordinarily narrow street, and parking cars there, even butting out the way they would, they're going to dramatically impact the ability of any large vehicles to go down there, such as fire trucks, oversized ambulances, UPS and all that. So I'm not comfortable, frankly, with anything more than it can fit in the driveway there, because I don't know what the ability is in that garage. That garage looks kind of small to me. So, I'm happy to defer it, but I'd be inclined to vote against it.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we call for the vote.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci.
Aye.
Councilmember Henley. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Moss.
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse. Councilmember Tower.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you've deferred this item indefinitely.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5, LBC Rentals LLC for conditional use permit, raise short-term rental at 209 83rd Street, Units A and B, District 5, Lynn Haven.
Are the applicant's representatives Eddie Burdon?
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Again, for the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney, representing LBC Rentals LLC. Ms. Messner, thank you for your kindness and your civility. It's always appreciated. The application involves a duplex, each two-bedroom units, total of 4 at 83rd Street, a block and a half from the ocean front. It's an older building that my clients, again, it's one of the Bouchard family entities have acquired. I hope that some of the council members had a chance to review the transcript of the testimony at the Planning Commission public hearing. This meets all the criteria. It's recommended by staff and the Planning Commission for approval. But it was interesting that one of the neighbors to this property were present and had concerns, and they expressed concerns about parties and things that had gone on with this property when it was not it's still not a short-term rental, but when it wasn't a short-term rental, and including when it's under prior ownership. And we were able to point out to them how this was far superior to that, because those would not be happening here like they happen constantly. And I recommend the transcript to you all. Again, 24/7 access to professional management, advertising that makes it very, very clear that no more than 2 cars can park here, and we monitored, they're checked in, and the Bouchards are not going to allow this to become a problem. In fact, it will be a better situation than, given, if you see the dwelling, it's not a prime year-round rental, and that's what they were having, is people that were, the owners were having, people that rented it and basically used it as a party place, which you won't have with all the conditions that apply here. And I do think it's important to note that if the neighbors do have a problem at any point in time, they not only notify the realtor involved, but they also notify the zoning administrator or the planning department. These are only for 5 years, and they can be pulled if the conditions are not adhered to. And that's something that's got to be taken into account and remembered. And the concerns about these, in some places, I actually totally agree with. But when you're talking about in a beachfront community, it's the right place for them with the right set of conditions, restrictions that are enforced and enforceable. So we would appreciate your support for the application. Stand by for any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have 2 speakers. The next speaker is Barbara Messner. And after Ms. Messner is David Grockmall.
Glad he said Bouchard, LBC. There's so many corporations that keep changing their names and morphing into other things. But this is 83rd Street. Between the hotels and, all these projects, it's major flooding there. It's also, like I said, the police don't even have time to take care of the speeding. The reckless driving I saw a couple nights ago down at the oceanfront is crazy, and I did not see one police officer on Atlantic Avenue. And traffic was so bad, I was lucky, because I know my way around the beach, to get back on Pacific and head away from Rudy Loop. But, 5 years, why not, test it out for 6 months or something? And if there's been complaints, Like I said, I tried to call 311 for just basic information the other day because I misplaced someone's phone number, and it was a 6-minute wait. They get the overflow for 911 when it's full. There's just too much going on, and you're adding to the problem, and I would be ashamed to be the 7 people that keep voting for these things. Thank you.
Next speaker is David Grotwall.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm David Grockmall, and I live at 219A 68th Street. And I originally signed up to speak on item number 7 because I back up to that item, but then to that property. But then when I looked at the agenda, I see there are 5, 6, and 7 are the same requests for the north end. And I'm opposed to all of them in the north end, mainly because they're going to change the character of the north end. There are over 54, probably 60 short-term rentals, weekly rentals there. And I called Atkinson Realty, and they manage 54 of them right now. There's one on my street across Atlantic Avenue, right on the corner. They don't have enough parking. There are cars in the street. They have parties there. On move-out days, there's trash. The more you approve, as I said, it's going to change the character. The north end of Virginia Beach is a residential area. The more there are Airbnbs and weekly rentals, it's going to change the nature, and we just don't want that. If you live there, you'll understand. I'm going to speak on the next one, and then number 7.
We gotta go according to,
I understand.
you'll be called back up.
Okay, but I ask that you deny all 3 of these. But if you don't want to deny them, at least consider this. Defer all of the north end requests indefinitely and study them with the North Virginia Beach Civic League, which has opposed all of these in the north end, along with the planning department, and see if they can come up with some way to make these things work, or come up with some limit per street, per whatever. We just can't keep continuing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Mr. Moss.
I just wanted to recognize,
Wait,
I know,
wait, can we get the motion, and then, we'll have the
Well,
comment.
Mr. Burdon, did you want to?
Mr. Burdon, you have a rebuttal?
Just very briefly, appreciate both Ms. Messner and Mr. Grockmall's comments. The 68th Street versus this section, 83rd Street, are worlds apart. And so that's the first thing that I would say. I am not aware, but I'm not disputing it necessarily, but I'm not aware that the North End Civic League has looked at or taken a position on this application whatsoever. And I don't, while there, I'm sure, are members of the North End Civic League who may be opposed to rentals in general, maybe some short-term rentals, weekly rentals. I don't believe that the North Virginia Beach Civic League has taken a position against this application whatsoever. And I don't think it will have any effect on the character of the North End. If you look at this property, it's not like where Mr. Rockmall lives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Wood.
Mr. Moss.
Okay.
I just wanted to I know Vice Mayor Lewis Jones and then also Mrs. Henley remember when Mr. Grockmall served as the head of our General Services Department and was a long-term honorable public servant in Virginia Beach, and I just wanted to recognize him at the podium about his service to the city when he was up here. That's all I
Okay,
wanted.
thank you very much, Mr. Moss.
Thanks. Well, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. With respect to Mr. Grockmall's comments about parties and things like that, and some comments Ms. Messner's made previously, I just want to point out that the same conditions in all of these, condition number 4, no events with more than the permitted number of people who may stay overnight, number of bedrooms multiplied by 3, shall be held at the short-term rental and the property on which it's located. This short-term rental property may not request or obtain a special event permit. So there, at no time can there be more than the maximum number of people who are permitted to occupy the space. So if there are in fact parties or things like that, then that's obviously something that should be reported, but otherwise there should not be. Based on this, the other comment, North Beach Civic League has never been shy about sharing their opinion about zoning items, and I've heard nothing on this. And frankly, flip to the parking if you would again for me. Somebody. So this is the exactly the kind of parking I like to see, where it's not stacked up, it all fits in there nicely, and there's plenty of parking there, so I move approval, Mr. Mayor.
And we have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, the vote, please.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Nay.
Councilmember Moss?
Nay.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 8 to 3, you've approved the application of LBC Rentals LLC.
Okay, moving on to item number 6, Cynthia E. Fulmer Carzo and Christopher G. Carzo at UX and Deborah Dare for a conditional use permit range short-term rental at 202 76th Street, District 5, Lynn Haven.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe the applicant is.
The applicant did not
Yeah,
register with me.
so just so everybody understands, I mean, if people want to speak on it, that's fine, but there's, this is the one that I requested that gets an indefinite deferral because there were issues with the interior construction of the house that made it a potential double unit in a duplex. So we've asked for this to be indefinitely deferred as well. So feel free to call the speakers, but I
Sure.
mean, it's just the request, we should not have the applicant here.
The applicant did not register with me.
Okay.
In all fairness, I went by there today, and the couple who owns it were under the understanding that there would be a deferral, so that's why they're not here, too.
As was the
Yes.
one person who actually contacted me in opposition to it. I contacted them and told them that I was going to move for an indefinite deferral, and they were indicating that they would, if they participated, it'd probably be via WebEx, so if they're not on WebEx, then.
So we did have a few speakers. Mary Snow, I'm not sure if she was coming or not. Mary Snow. Mr. Grockmall, did you want to make additional comments?
No.
Ms. Messner? Barbara Messner?
Good evening. I've lived at the North End also, and I used to go to the beach there. It's really hard to find parking everywhere. Part of the reason there's so many people that try to go to the North End is because there's no parking in the middle of the beach. We wouldn't be having so many problems in Croatan and Sandbridge if there was more parking. Yeah, I oppose all of these, and, 54 for Atkinson. Atkinson's the reason that there was no affordable parking. It was summer, winter before, and now it's short-term. But, all these wealthy people, Atkinson family's been in business since 1954. The realtors can buy up the property. Some of these investors are realtors. It's just not fair to the regular citizens, and I think it's hysterical that, some people are worried about the quality of the North End. Oh, excuse me. North End magazine, Y'all approved the Cavalier for Bruce Thompson. You know, all residents matter, all neighborhoods matter. You can't, you know, be concerned about the north end. And one of the pictures of those, I know some of these duplexes, you can't back out. You know, some of these are right on Atlantic Avenue. There's no place to back out for some of these. So the traffic, the increased traffic, and you can't control, you don't know because somebody signs up and they say, oh, we're nice, who they're going to bring in. You know, I think it's ridiculous, and you know, like I said, you know, I've seen, you know, the civic leagues, you know, what they approve, and you know how many times they spoke out about the Cavalier parking, and there's, you know, special parking. I mean, there's 2 entire floors of hard liquor distillery at the Cavalier. And then all these golf carts and all these scooters and everything. It's nothing but, the whole city is just party city. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, well, Mr. Cropwell wants to speak.
Yes.
He said, oh, did you want to speak?
I did have one,
I'm sorry.
I have one thing that I want to mention as far as the north end goes. These property owners, it seems to me, all they want to do is make money off of their residential property. They want to change a single-family home into a rental home so they can make more money. And I think that's wrong, particularly in the north end, which is a predominantly residential home. And I wish you'd take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Wood?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we defer this indefinitely.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have indefinitely deferred this item.
Okay, and then item 7, Stephanie Fatala and Dune OK LLC for conditional use permit short-term rental at 216 69th Street, Unit B, District 5, Lynn Haven.
So, are you the applicant, ma'am?
I am,
You
yes.
did not register with me, so go ahead. You can just state your name for the record, please.
I thought I registered with you.
You're fine.
My name is Stephanie Fala, and,
Oh,
Good
welcome.
evening. Hi, hello. I purchased the home on 69th Street to give my family some more time in Virginia Beach. I grew up here, and most of my family still lives here, but I wanted to give my son as much time at the oceanfront. Our current work situation has us living in Richmond, so to subsidize our mortgage, we use Airbnb for short-term rental. And as soon as we decided to do that, I got a business license, which is just me, and got a conditional use permit and registered with all the appropriate taxes for the city and have been paying since. We've complied with every code and ordinance since we started doing that. I have not heard any complaints from any of my neighbors on my block. I have 7 letters of support. I did receive a phone call today from not the neighbor that lives directly behind me, Mr. Rockmall, but he lives next to the person directly behind me. And I asked him if he had had any issues with my property, and he stated that he had not. He was just opposed to short-term rentals in general. But I only rent to families. We screen everyone. People have to request a book. We've never had an issue. I have a camera at the front door and a camera at the back door. I have a caretaker that lives about 5 minutes away that can be there at a moment's notice. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for the
Yeah.
applicant?
Do you have these letters?
I do, yes.
Can you give them to the clerk?
They are included in my application as well. but-
I don't see them in our write-up. Are they, Bobby, you have them?
I do, yes, sir.
Because it said in the write-up there were 7 letters of support, but I did not see them in here.
Oversight on my part, sir.
I'd just like to know who they're from.
I'll take those, ma'am.
Who am I handing these to?
I'll take them. Thank you. Vice Mayor, would you like these, or do you need?
Yeah, should we, if you can pass them down to
Sure.
us, then we'll return them to you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker?
Barbara Messner. And then after Ms. Messner is David Grockmall.
You know, a lot of the people at the North End, you know, they don't mind this because a lot of the people come here just in the summer. They've had, a lot of people in Richmond have been buying summer homes here, but they were for their families. You know, I oppose all of these stories about, the economy. What about the economy for the rest of us? What about the people who live here who don't have a lot of money, who just want to go to the beach and find a parking space? There is no parking. And I think the most important thing that I think everybody here needs to pay attention to as these 7 votes is we have violence, shootings all over the place, people dying. And there's no restrictions on the breweries, there's no curfews, nothing. And you're gonna add new short-term rentals. I think it's like 783 police officers, and some of them just went through training that are gonna start. A lot of these people come from other states, they don't know the area. And a lot of the police officers have left because, new people coming in were getting the same pay after they've been here for a while. So, like I said, we have bigger fish to fry and public safety and public health and short-term rentals with people coming from other areas. Here we're supposed to wear a mask everywhere, but you're opening up the beach to everybody and, short-term rentals, but not hotels. The hotels are open. The bars are open. So, like I said, you're all responsible for anything that happens in those houses when you vote for them, knowing that the police cannot be there and that a lot of these people are not even in town. They just have a neighbor that's going to go over there. And you've heard the people complain about what happened in their neighborhoods. So all of you that vote, you're liable for not protecting the residents. Thank you.
Mr. Grockmall, would you like to make comments? Thank you.
Yes, as I said, this is the one that I originally signed up for. And I'm against it for all the reasons I've previously said. But I decided to find out how everybody else felt about 216B 69th Street. So I started a petition. I went up and down my street, 68th Street. I went up and down 69th Street, and then I went down 70th Street. And I have 37 signatures of people who are opposed to this application. And at least 5 houses on 69th Street are opposed to it. And that's because there's already a short-term rental on 69th Street. And there's a second one on the feeder road right around the corner from 69th Street. And people see what's going on with those 2 short-term rentals, and they don't like it. Now, this lady is a very nice person, and she's guarantees that that sort of thing won't happen, but who knows? And I'm just asking you, if people are objecting to this one, if you would take a look at all these others and see how people in the neighborhood feel about them, then you might think differently. So I really hope you will oppose this one, or at least defer it and see what can be done with all, to satisfy all these neighbors who oppose it. And I'd like to give this to the city clerk or somebody.
Yes, sir. I'll come grab it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Wood?
Thanks. I was going to ask, do you know what addresses on 69th Street signed that petition?
202A 69th, 206B, 209 69th, 224 69th, 221 69th, 70th Street, 68. That's all.
Okay.
Oh, at a quick glance. Yes, that's all.
Looks like one of those is also on this one, so,
I'm sorry.
okay. No more speakers?
No more speakers, sir.
Did the applicant want to come up and,
Ma'am, would you like to rebut?
Only to say that everyone on 69th Street has my phone number and email, and
Could you get a little
you-
closer?
yeah, it has my phone number and email, and I'm not positive, but from when I spoke to Mr. Grockmall earlier today, it sounded like he was only made aware of my short-term rental when he got the notice in the mail about the hearing, which kind of goes to show that it has had little impact on him, as, you know, we rented it out all last summer and through the fall, and has never had any negative, no neighbors have ever had any negative complaints or feedback for us. So if that was the only way that he found out, then it goes to show that it's how little it does impact the neighborhood or the integrity of the neighborhood. And it is our home as well, so we are very careful to who we rent to.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Mr. Wood?
thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Tejon, can you tell me how many short-term rentals do you estimate are at the north end?
I'll have to look that up, I'm sorry, sir.
More than 54, I bet.
Yes, more than 54.
Yeah. Well, while you're looking that up, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that short-term rentals have been in the north end for upwards of 100 years, based on what we've heard. I certainly understand that people, you know, might have differing opinions on them, and I certainly respect that, but they've been there for a long time. There have been businesses that have been built around them for 30, 40, 50 years, and I just think that this is not a new phenomenon, and I don't think that we need to think that, and the fact that the applicant says she's been operating hers for over a year is kind of indicative of that. The only issue, and I've talked about this during the informal session that I have with this one and some of the others, is the fact that even though there's 25 feet of unimproved right-of-way that the applicant uses for parking, just as long as it's very well understood that those 5 parking spaces if they go away, if 69th Street's widened, that there will no longer be a permitted short-term rental in this place. Not that there's any CIP right now to widen 69th Street, but I think that's important. And I certainly understand the opposition. I appreciate the letters of support. It looks like the immediate neighbors are in support, at least on 69th Street. So I would move approval of this one.
Do we have a second? Second.
I'll second. Can I make a comment, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor?
we're open for discussion.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say for Mr. Grockmill's benefit and perhaps others that are watching, I find this short-term rental situation to be a real conundrum. I am generally been supporting these that comply with the conditional use permit regulations, if you will, but I too am troubled by the numbers of them, particularly in some areas. And I wanted to remind people that we passed an ordinance 2 weeks ago, I believe, to refer an ordinance to the Planning Commission to take another look, if you will, at the short-term ordinance. I just find it very difficult to vote against these. I arrived on this council at a time when this was the law. And I know a number of people have invested in short-term rentals, and while they have no legal right of reliance on our approval of these, I just think it's unfair and not good policy for us to be turning those down that clearly comply with the existing regs. But I'm open to having them changed if that is the will of the people, and particularly on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis if necessary. And I would just urge Mr. Grockmill or anyone else who's got concerns about them to participate in whatever hearings that the Planning Commission has on this issue. If you have opinions one way or the other, and you'll also have another opportunity once the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, assuming they do, to look at these again. So I want to tell you I'm open, but I wanted to just explain my votes in favor of those that comply with the basics that we have approved in the past. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're ready.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Nay.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Jones?
Nay.
Councilmember Moss?
Nay.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 8 to 3, you've approved this application.
Okay, Mr. Vice Mayor, can we do the appointments?
Mr. Mayor, I make the following nominations to the Arts and Humanities Commission, Emma Davis. To the Audit Committee, Karen Hill. Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Wood. To the Bayfront Advisory Commission, Philip Davenport and Robert Magoon. To the Bikeways and Trails Advisory Committee, Amy Frostick. To the Board of Building Code Appeals, Robert Stern, representing architect, David Anderson, representing design professional, James Brewer, representing mechanical contractor, Tricia McIntosh, representing residential property manager, Richard L. Bowie, representing construction experience individual, Emery Chicky, same, Jonathan Spade as an alternate. For the Board of Zoning Appeals, Kevin Newton as an alternate. To Community Policy and Management Team, Suzanne Baldwin. To the Community Services Board, Catrice Washington. To the Health Services Advisory Board, Brian Weinstein. To the Minority Business Council, Francina Harrison, Francis Knight Thompson, Colleen P. Nobhan. To the Open Space Advisory Committee, Nicholas Anoya. To the Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia, Teresa Gonzalvo. To the Virginia Beach Towing Advisory Board, Michael O'Neill. To the Wetlands Board, Emily Steinhover. Did I miss anybody?
Did you read the board, the BZA?
I said Kevin Newton.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Did I miss anybody? Okay.
okay, we're open for the vote.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you've appointed those read by Vice Mayor.
Thank you all. We stand adjourned.
No new business?